Texas Governor Greg Abbott is staying true to his word. The first bus of illegal aliens showed up in D.C., and there's more on the way. What happened after they arrived, and what's the plan for them next? NTD's Melina Wisecup was there when they arrived. Here's what she found out.
Hours after arriving in Washington, D.C., a group of illegal immigrants is headed off to different U.S. cities. The people boarding this bus were headed to a Catholic charity in D.C., who's helping them buy tickets to travel to their final destinations.
Most of them do have family or friends in the place where they really want to go. We're happy to help them if they want to stay here. Most are choosing to move on. And so we're helping to buy tickets. We bought them food. They were hungry when they arrived. We have the gospel mandate to welcome the stranger.
One of the volunteers told NTD that they're helping because the city says they want no part of this. It's unclear if Texas's governor has the legal authority to transport these busloads of migrants to the U.S. Capitol. And the ones that took up Governor Abbott's offer came to D.C. voluntarily, after arriving in Texas just yesterday.
When we got to Texas, we had nothing because they had taken everything. We heard there was help and a bus to Washington, and there would be someone to facilitate travel because in Texas there is no help.
Right on this street is where that first bus of illegal immigrants was dropped off earlier this morning. About 30 of them were dropped off right here. And this location is quite interesting. Not only is it right at the doorstep of the U.S. Capitol, but it's also right in front of the Fox News building and the NBC building. And right down the street is Union Station, a popular traveling area here in D.C. where many of those immigrants went to kind of wait and figure out their next steps. We went and spoke to some of them to find out what their plans are now.
I want to go to Miami. We don't have anyone to receive us there. We don't know anyone. We are alone.
He's one of the few that are headed to Miami tonight. About 18 others stayed in D.C. with friends or family. Some now headed to New York. And they tell us their journey was long and rough.
In Mexico, they robbed us of everything. The cartels and the police. They took our money, our things. My family stayed in Monterrey, as it is difficult to travel without money. I decided to travel ahead and work to send for my family, because my wife is there, my 5-year-old son. We started the journey on January 7th. We've been walking, not in a plane or anything, walking little by little.
The point of sending them to D.C., Governor Abbott says, is to force the federal government to deal firsthand with the border crisis. This is only the first bus. Governor Greg Abbott says there's now another bus en route to D.C. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
And with Title 42 set to be rolled back at the end of May, a congressional delegation made their way to the southern border. One of those members is Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. We're happy to have him on to discuss. Congressman Byron Donalds, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
It's good to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Congressman, you've just visited the border. I'm sure during Easter recess there's a lot of other things you'd like to be doing with your time. Border's not a pleasant place to be. It's scorching hot, hard to find shelter. Why'd you make the trip?
Oh, it's important to understand exactly what's happening at the southern border right now, especially with the administration looking at getting rid of Title 42, which is actually going to lead to a massive spike in illegal immigrant entrance into the United States. So we wanted to go down there, get a firsthand look at what's happening now today with accurate information that's current, so we can try to at least explain to the American people at a minimum what's happening, and also advocate for changes that the president needs to make in order to secure the southern border.
And just a quick follow-up, I mean, just how important was it for you to see and hear what you did with your own eyes and ears?
Look, it's critical. For the life of me, I don't understand how the president and the vice president are making decisions about what's going on the southern border when they're not down there on the ground actually talking to the men and women who have to do the work, who have to do the jobs. Look, we went and toured a section of the border yesterday where what you see are lookouts literally across the river. They're letting people walk across to the United States. People then, they just drop their IDs from Mexico. They're usually travel visas from Mexico. They drop them and they leave them on the ground south of the border, and then they give themselves up to our border agents. The reason they're doing this is because if our border agents have proof that they have a legal tie to be in Mexico, we can send them back to Mexico. But without that legal tie, if you will, then the Biden administration is just processing asylum claims at the southern border, which is an illegal point of entry, and they're just releasing people into the United States. On my flight yesterday, I literally saw 3-4 people who had some of the different material that they make up in a border holding facility, and they were on my United Airline flight last night.
Now, Congressman, you mentioned the border agents. Did you have a chance to speak with them? How stressed are they? And was there value to being able to talk to them directly?
There's absolute value in talking to them directly. They're incredibly stressed. Morale is low. They view it that they're not being able to actually do the job that they were hired to do. They've largely become an agency of processing people as opposed to securing a southern border. And what's worse is that the border agents will tell you that because we're having to do so much, spending so much time just processing paperwork, the drug cartels are using this to traffic more fentanyl, more cocaine, and more heroin into the United States. Border Patrol knows this is happening. The administration has turned a deaf ear to it. They simply do not care about all of the drugs that are being trafficked into the United States right now. Governor
of Texas stayed true to his word, has just shipped the first batch of illegal aliens to Washington, D.C. Do you think this is a case where when the problem is delivered to your doorstep, the people who support open borders might open up their eyes to the crisis and, the whole out of sight, out of mind?
I believe so. I firmly held for a long time that if Washington, D.C. sat on a southern border, that this would not be the policy of the United States. We would not allow for just rampant illegal immigration to come across our borders. But because so many people, especially in the Democrat Party, are far removed from these border regions, it's out of sight, out of mind for them. So I support what Governor Abbott is doing.
Congressman Byron Donalds, thank you.
Anytime.
And the CDC is extending their mask mandate on public transit until May 3rd. The mask mandate on public transportation, including planes, buses, and trains, will stay for at least another 15 days. The current mandate was set to expire next Monday. Passengers will face fines as high as $3,000 for refusing to wear a mask while traveling. The Airlines for America organization sent a letter to leaders of the CDC and the Department of Health and Human Services calling for an end to the mask mandate. Governors from 21 states sued the Biden administration last month in an effort to end the federal public transit mask mandate. And data is coming out of the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and it shows wholesale prices in the United States are surging at their fastest annual pace on record. The Producer Price Index, which measures the wholesale price of goods and services, rose by over 11% last month. This latest record-breaking price surge is likely to amplify concerns about inflation even more broadly. Higher wholesale prices tend to get passed along to consumers. Major contributors to the wholesale price spike were sharp increases in energy and transportation costs. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen appealed to China and other countries to help end Russia's war in Ukraine. Yellen is warning that those who seek to undermine Western sanctions will face consequences.
And let's be clear, the unified coalition of sanctioning countries will not be indifferent to actions that undermine the sanctions we've put in place.
Speaking at the Atlantic Council in Washington, Yellen said Beijing's standing in the world would suffer if it fails to do so.
China cannot expect the global community to respect its appeals to the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity in the future if it does not respect these principles now when it counts.
Yellen's comments come after China continues to refuse adding sanctions onto Russia for its invasion of Ukraine and refusing to denounce Russia's aggression. A key factor driving 40-year high inflation is the cost of oil, since oil is used in far more than just powering your automobile. President Biden has taken some temporary measures in recent days to lower the cost of oil, but is that enough to fundamentally change the trajectory of out-of-control inflation? Larry Behrens was communications director for the former governor of the great energy state of New Mexico, and he currently serves as director of Power the Future. And we're happy to have him on to discuss. Larry Behrens, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Great, Steve, to be here. I appreciate it.
Larry, President Biden just announced allowing the sale of E15 fuel in an attempt to lower gas prices. This comes a week or two after Biden opened up millions of barrels a day from the emergency energy reserves. Is this a kitchen sink approach?
It is from one perspective, in the sense that President Biden only wants to take temporary actions to try to fix the crisis that is happening across the country right now. He could approve pipelines. He could be looking at ways to make permanent development here in the United States, but he won't do that. He only wants to take actions like, something over the summer or a temporary release from the strategic reserve in order to try to placate Americans right now because it's an election season. But make no mistake, if the president could, he would not even be doing these. The only reason he's doing so is because he's worried about November, because Americans know, and polls have shown, that they hold him accountable for the gas prices, as they should.
Larry, you just touched upon it a bit there. If the concern is climate change, this E15 will actually create more pollution. So where does the argument for more domestic energy drilling go from here?
Well, I think it's in the same place it's always been. America drills and creates and refines, not creates, but obviously extracts oil and refines better than any country in the world, cleaner than any country in the world. And your point is exactly right, Steve. Why are we begging other countries who produce it, in much less environmentally sound ways to produce more oil? And so you start to wonder, is this really about the environment, or is it about political power? Because the president is taking these actions that on their surface against what he says he cares about, and the environmental groups who usually scream about such things are awfully quiet. I think it's all about they're concerned about November and political power, and so they're more than willing to go against their own, what they say are important beliefs, in order to maintain their stranglehold on Washington.
Larry, would more drilling ease the high prices of gasoline in the short term or long term, and if so, how?
Well, it's simple as supply and demand. That's a great question, Steve. In the short term, it would be very difficult. What the president did on day one in canceling Keystone and taking a whole bunch of other executive orders is sending a message to producers saying, if you want to invest in this industry right now, you could lose a lot of money, and send a message to energy workers saying, we're coming after your jobs. And so it's made them leery. It's made them really, really hesitant to try to work with this administration now that they say they're trying to do everything they can. But to your point, if he were to make a U-turn, which he should do tomorrow, and say, okay, I was wrong on this, we're going to make permanent solutions to increase American energy production, it would still take time. There is an absolute trust deficit with this administration and energy workers across the country.
Larry, you make some very interesting points between some of these temporary solutions versus long-term fixes. I really think that it needs to be discussed. Before I let you go, we're now at 8.5% inflation, 8.5%. How is energy factored into this number, and is there a way that energy could potentially lower this number?
Energy factors in a great deal. I mean, Americans know that everything they get in the supermarket is, produced, transported, and maintained using fossil fuels and using energy in the United States. And the more that cost goes up, because we've messed with the supply, the more the cost for everything goes up. And so energy is at the absolute core of the inflation problem here in the United States. And to your point, exactly, yes, if we were to make energy affordable as it was under the previous administration, and even in other times in the history of our country, we would find that would have a positive impact on bringing down inflation, because, when energy is affordable, it makes a lot more things affordable.
Larry Behrens, thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Great to talk with you.